Dr. Emmanuel Manny Hostin, an orthopedic surgeon and husband of The View co-host Sunny Hostin, is accused in December lawsuit fraudulently billing insurance. By the way, this is a Daily Caller story I'm reading. The lawsuit alleges Hostin knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services in exchange for kickbacks and or compensation, and names him among nearly 200 defendants in one of New York's largest RICO cases.
For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
Sunny Hostin probably thought she was facing the worst day of her life. Then Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus barged in with a storm of sarcasm, turning everything into a full-blown comedy roast. Her husband's $450 million court scandal? That was just the warm-up. What followed was pure unfiltered humiliation served sizzling hot. Tyrus delivered ruthless jabs with no mercy, while Gutfeld fired rapid-fire insults like a machine gun. Sunny's silence could have won her an Oscar for the best poker face. But the real chaos, it came from hidden accounts, explosive legal showdowns, and courtroom drama more shocking than anyone could imagine.
Only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, you know, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, you know, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Sunny has spent years on The View, acting like the Supreme Court of daytime TV, gavel in one hand and moral superiority in the other. She doesn't just give opinions, she hands down full-on verdicts. One wrong take, and you're practically exiled from brunch. But this week, the self-proclaimed queen of legal virtue found herself caught in a scandal of her own making. A $450 million courtroom catastrophe starring her own husband. The very courtroom where she spent years passing judgment became a live stage for her family's chaos. And the irony? It was so thick you could slice it with a gavel.
Or man that will go after white America and talk about them like dogs. That doesn't represent our ideals or values for anyone. And get rid of those people, and this will clear up real quick. So do you have to actually look in the mirror and clean up your own backyard and get the racist people out? Because that's who you allowed in. You allowed black racists on TV who could just go all day and say anything about white people. And I guess lo and behold, they forgot that there's a lot of people at home, white people at home during the day that are not watching your show anymore. So just clean it up.
Yeah, you know, Emily.
Cue the popcorn, because Greg and Tyrus revved up their sarcasm engines like they were ready to roast Mount Olympus itself. Sunny spent years perfecting the art of outrage on The View. Outraged, incensed, flabbergasted, anything to claim the moral high ground on a show that often felt more like a verbal cage match in a discussion. But now her husband is allegedly caught in a financial fiasco so massive it makes FTX look like a bake sale. Suddenly it's all about privacy and due process. How convenient. The queen of courtroom verdicts is suddenly on defense. Silence replaces sass, and the tough talk takes a vacation. The hypocrisy here is so thick you could spread it with a shovel.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe.
When someone else is under fire, Sunny unleashes righteous fury and barely hidden contempt. But when her own husband takes the hot seat, crickets. The loudest legal voice on The View suddenly discovers the magic of silence. Bravo. Truly. Then along come Greg and Tyrus, two men armed with enough sarcasm to power a small nation, and they weren't about to let this golden opportunity to roast hypocrisy go to waste, tearing in like wolves at a buffet.
Makes Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by The View's gravitational pull.
The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Greg Gutfeld, a master at exposing media hypocrisy with the precision of a sniper and the humor of a stand-up comic, practically threw a party on air. And Tyrus? He might as well have brought marshmallows to roast over the flaming wreckage of Sunny's credibility. Let's talk about this $450 million courtroom scandal, shall we? Reports in fiery social media threads say Sunny's husband got trapped in a legal nightmare so massive it makes Enron look like a typo. Allegations range from financial mismanagement to possible fraud, but who's counting? Certainly not Sunny, who suddenly has less to say about accountability than a broken Alexa. It's as if someone unplugged her inner prosecutor and left only static. The irony is delicious. This is the same woman that built a career dissecting other people's legal messes like a hawk spotting roadkill. When a Republican gets sued, she's halfway through her speech already. But when it's her own backyard on fire, suddenly it's not the time to speculate. That's not irony, it's performance art. Gutfeld wasted no time turning his segment into a roast battle disguised as commentary.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter. So instead...
If hypocrisy were a sport, Sunny would have just taken home the gold medal. Gutfeld tore into the double standard with the giddy energy of a kid unwrapping presents, while Tyrus loomed in the background, sharpening his verbal machete. And oh, did he swing it. Never one to hold back, Tyrus delivered zingers with the cool confidence of someone who's seen too much daytime TV. He didn't just expose the scandal, he cut through the smugness, the self-righteousness, and the crumbling credibility that came with it. When the queen of condescension loses her crown to a scandal this massive, you can bet Tyrus is there with a velvet pillow to collect it. And let's not forget the View co-hosts, the so-called paragons of outrage, who went from fiery defenders of justice to a choir of silence in record time. Joy Behar, usually loud enough to be heard from outer space, looked like she'd seen a ghost. Whoopi Goldberg, normally armed with morality monologues, could barely manage a shrug. Apparently, when Sunny's name hits the legal docket, their outrage meter dies instantly. These are the same people who once threw multi-segment meltdowns because a conservative mispronounced a word.
Sure. All that, and the price of butter. Sunny gets the game ball. If it wasn't for her, asking that question, it might have been a closer election. Listen, they're bitter, they're angry, they're entitled. They also should be. This should have been a reset for everyone who pushed lies and misinformation for the last. They call them Hitler. They call these things. America rejected them, and instead of coming back and saying we lied, they instead are now doubling down. So let her keep doing it, because if she keeps that up, we're going to keep getting the Senate and probably the House and the White House, because people see right through your lies. So keep doing what you're doing. Game ball to Sunny.
A $450 million courtroom disaster involving one of their own, and suddenly everything's complicated and nuanced. How convenient. Meanwhile, social media ignited like gasoline on fire. Memes flooded timelines, and Twitter roasted her without mercy. Gutfeld, ever the opportunist, used the chaos to make a sharper point about media elitism. He called out the classic double standard, public figures who demand accountability, just not when it's their turn in the spotlight. The moral high ground, it seems, is only comfortable when you're standing on it, not when it's crumbling beneath you. With his trademark deadpan wit, Gutfeld noted that a show built on truth and transparency suddenly came down with a case of selective laryngitis. Then Tyrus delivered a rant so dry it could qualify as desert air, mocking the idea of Sunny giving legal advice, while allegedly helping craft statements about her husband's misunderstood finances. The only thing more confusing than the charges? Sunny's moral compass, spinning faster than a politician hooked up to a lie detector.
End of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm going to go, slave owner! Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. Really? You think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing. One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any is she said, well, I guess that's just what they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before.
And the cherry on top? The View acted like it never happened. Not a whisper, not a single sentence. They can spend 20 minutes dissecting Taylor Swift's ex-boyfriends, but somehow can't spare 60 seconds for a $450 million courtroom scandal tearing through Sunny's personal life. Maybe it's classy, or maybe it's just plain cowardly. You decide. Gutfeld closed his segment with pure poetic irony, asking if Sunny might want to come on his show to discuss accountability, the sarcasm so thick you could bottle it. Tyrus leaned in with that trademark smirk that said everything without a word. We told you so. But this isn't just about Sunny. This fiasco shines a spotlight on the larger hypocrisy parade marching through mainstream media. These so-called truth-tellers love to preach justice, but when their own skeletons tumble out, it becomes a theater of the absurd. They quote laws like Holy Scripture until someone points out their commandments are written on paper thinner than their excuses.
It's not even that. In The View, you don't need to find Trumpers. You need to fire your race baiters.
Yeah.
You need to fire the two races. You've had people. You had a McCain on there. You've had people on there before, and you ran them off. So the racist ones who want to stick to this, Whoopi and Sunny, and the, was it Bette Midler? What's her name? Yeah, broke-ass Bette Midler. Fire them and bring people in. Maybe you could get McCain to come back.
Sunny's defenders insist she shouldn't be judged for her husband's actions. And sure, on paper, that sounds fair. But let's not forget, this is the same woman who spent years dissecting the families of political rivals like she was hosting an episode of CSI, Hypocrisy. Suddenly, when the tables turn, she's begging for context and understanding. That's not just a double standard, it's a double-decker of irony with a heaping layer of denial on top. And the fallout? Oh, it's just getting started. More details are bound to explode into the spotlight, and Sunny might have to do more than pout through commercial breaks. Maybe a public statement, maybe a personal leave, or maybe just a whole new level of her signature resting smug face. Whatever she chooses, her credibility has already taken a nuclear hit. And honestly, The View was never exactly a temple of journalistic integrity. But this scandal ripped the curtain off the stage, revealing a group of hosts scrambling to protect their own like a daytime soap opera mob. Expect self-awareness? Forget it. These are people who could trip over their contradictions and still blame the other side. The odds of them admitting hypocrisy are about as likely as Sunny filing her husband's bail paperwork on live TV.
That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years.
If The View had a mute button for awkward scandals, Sunny would have slammed it so hard it might have cracked. And honestly, her reputation depended on it. The queen of courtroom monologues and dramatic legal rants suddenly became the high priestess of silence. The same woman who could deliver a 10-minute lecture about a squirrel sneezing on Capitol Hill somehow forgot how to speak when the topic involved her husband's $450 million courtroom chaos. Coincidence? Sure. And maybe pigs just started a startup. Gone were the smug cross-examinations and unnecessary legal buzzwords. Sunny, once a fierce justice warrior, became a human screensaver. Viewers watched in disbelief as she blinked slowly, fidgeted with her note cards, and looked like she was drafting her own plea deal. It was like watching a lawyer play charades during a tax audit. Every twitch, every forced sip from her mug screamed, "Please don't ask me about the giant scandal tap dancing through this segment." Her body language was pure courtroom mime, arms crossed tighter than a locked vault, shoulders tense enough to cut glass. One minute she was nodding like a bobblehead at a law seminar, and the next she was zoning out so hard you'd think she was counting ceiling tiles for legal advice.
She is shaming descendants of this. Will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
Somewhere between Whoopi's eye rolls and Joy's off-the-rails tangents, Sunny sat frozen like she'd just seen her husband's bail terms printed across her note cards. And when the conversation veered anywhere near corruption, fraud, or public embarrassment, Sunny suddenly became fascinated with the floor. That blank stare wasn't deep thought, it was a silent plea to vanish into thin air. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. Viewers saw it, Twitter saw it, and Greg Gutfeld definitely saw it. He misses nothing. Normally, Sunny is quick to cut people off with her famous, "Actually, that's not how due process works." But now, the only thing she's defending is her facial expression. Because guess what? The due process this time is happening to her own husband, in a real court. Those constant interruptions that once made her the loudest voice in the room are now haunting her credibility like courtroom ghosts. She sits, she blinks, and she sips from that oversized mug like it's filled with invisibility potion, while viewers hold their breath, waiting for her to snap and yell objection at her own reflection. The silence isn't graceful, it's desperate. A desperate attempt to outlast, outblink, and outdrink a scandal far too big to hide.
Anna went in a different direction. But I love the fact that, Manny is younger and he's
How much younger is he?
Just a little bit.
He's like 1 year, isn't he? Like a month or a year or 10 years?
No,
5 years.
It's more than a year.
Oh.
Anyway, it's not about me. I think.
Oh, no.
I think that it's very helpful that he's handy, and when we travel, I'm not picking up any bags. He's the one that's hefting them overhead. He
Exactly.
throws the garbage out.
Right.
He does the heavy stuff.
Sorry, Sunny, but you can't cross-examine karma. Still, Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus delivered the kind of catharsis America didn't know it needed. In a world where double standards run wild and sanctimonious finger-pointing has become a full-time job. Watching the self-righteous stumble feels downright therapeutic. Will Sunny bounce back? Probably. The View has a history of forgiving its hosts, so long as they preach from the approved moral script. She might even spin this into a redemption arc, maybe a TED Talk called When Justice Hits Too Close to Home. But until then, the memes keep rolling, the internet keeps laughing, and Gutfeld and Tyrus keep circling her hypocrisy like vultures with punchlines. Because when you spend your career handing out moral verdicts, it's only a matter of time before the gavel swings back. And in Sunny's case, it hit hard enough to knock the smug right off her highlight reel. So the next time The View serves up another moral lecture, just remember, sometimes the loudest voices are the quickest to choke on their own words, especially when Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus are waiting in the wings with the receipts and the jokes.